My name is Alexandra Wharton, and I'm here today to talk about delayed sleep wake phase disorder. Um, that stands for, I'll be calling it DSPD for this presentation. I've suffered from it since I was 8 years old, and it runs in my family. My grandfather, father, sister have all been extreme night owls. And I'm advocating for increased awareness and research for circadian rhythm sleep disorders, which includes DSPD. I'm a board member of the Circadian Sleep Disorders Network, and I'm a chapter leader for Texas for Start School Later, and I'm thrilled to be part of NIH's SDRAB. DSPD is a type of circadian rhythm disorder that causes a person's internal body clock to be delayed by 4 hours, although that can range. It's an intractable condition and it can't be adjusted through self-discipline or willpower. This can be very difficult for typical sleepers to understand. It's not that rare. About 1 in 600 adults has it. That's 500,000 Americans. And 1 in 75 people have a variant of the CRY1 gene that's been shown to cause DSPD in humans. Unfortunately, even today, clinicians misdiagnose DSPD patients with chronic insomnia, believing they have depression or anxiety, and that's what causes their inability to fall asleep earlier. And it's not just misdiagnosed, but it's also mistreated. So first-line treatments such as chronotherapy can turn DSPD into non-24, which is even worse. Antidepressants like SSRIs may disrupt our circadian rhythms, and hypnotics like Ambien can lead to dependency. So more awareness of DSPD is desperately needed. Technology is not required to track one's sleep patterns. You can print out a 2-week sleep log from the internet and take it to a doctor or hopefully a sleep specialist. And when a patient complains that they can't fall asleep until 4 o'clock in the morning every night, despite following every sleep hygiene tip out there, a circadian rhythm disorder should be considered. Unfortunately, even today, that's still not happening. Furthermore, melatonin and cortisol can be tracked in a person over a 24-hour period, and that can also show that a person is indeed a late chronotype. There are several neurological and metabolic conditions that are comorbid with delayed sleep, such as autism, diabetes, dementia, obesity. In fact, 80% of ADHD cases in children report having delayed sleep. It's two sides of the same coin, and it makes sense to me. It's energy at the wrong time of the day. An MRI finds that a night owl's prefrontal cortex remains in a disabled offline state until the late morning. For typical sleepers, environmental cues set their body clock. So that's like light exposure, meal times, social activities, body temperature. But these cues are not effective for people with DSPD. There's something else going on. And so there's a lot of research happening right now. Is it a deficiency in a certain type of retinal ganglion cell? Does a person have a longer intrinsic circadian period? Does the person lack the buildup of sleep throughout the day so that they're not tired at night? And there's no magic bullet for DSPD. Treatments include light therapy, melatonin agonists, and it works for some people. But the best treatment right now is an accommodated schedule. To develop more effective treatments, we need to understand the physiological underpinnings of DSPD. And there is some hope on the horizon. The Nobel Prize winners in 2017 were body clock researchers. And among the many things they're investigating is how various mammals' biorhythms sync to the rotation of the Earth, and finding that some people have a 22-hour long clock, some people have a 27, or mammals long clock. There's also a blood test currently called time signature that calculates a person's circadian phase. It is not yet clinically available, but when it is, I think it'll be a real game changer in diagnosing DSPD and CRDs. In addition to the CRY1 gene that I mentioned earlier, which stands for cryptochrome, there are other gene variants that have been implicated in causing delayed sleep, such as of the clock gene and PER gene. And there are researchers all around the world working on this at UCSF, UCSC. That was an exciting announcement from the University of Oldenburg the other day. I don't have time to get into all that, but in the meantime, I'm working, and Circadian Sleep Disorders Network is working to, reassess our 9-to-5 society. Our daily schedules are still based on an agrarian economy. However, only 1% of the US population works in agriculture. Work tasks for most do not require sunlight. Companies should offer flex time. The pandemic has demonstrated that the world doesn't fall apart when people have adjusted schedules. Employers could increase productivity by aligning workers' schedules with their body clocks, which they did in a factory in Germany very successfully in the last few years. And employees, of course, would benefit from having better physical and mental health because they'd be working when they feel their best. Schools should start later. The Start School Later movement advocates for starting schools later. There's 138 chapters now worldwide with healthy hours legislation in several states. In South Texas, there are districts that start at 6:55 a.m. with bus pickup time at 5:45 a.m. Of course, this leads to absenteeism, truants. A lot of kids just end up dropping out of high school because of the start time. And we had two bills in the last 3 years for legislation for starting school later, or at least studying the benefits of starting school later. And I'm confident that we will have one at the next legislative session. And in conclusion, I'm working with many, many other people to increase awareness of DSPD, that it is not a psychological condition, but a physiological one, to improve diagnosis and treatment, to help people seek accommodations at work and school, and finally, to reduce the stigma of having a later chronotype.